9 common cat care mistakes that are ruining your cat's health. Right now, while you are reading this, your cat's immune system might be working against itself. And the cause is not a virus, not a parasite, not bad luck. The cause is something you do every single morning before you even have your first cup of coffee. Most owners refill the water bowl and walk away feeling like good cat parents. The bowl is full. The cat is hydrated. Job done. Except the science of feline renal biology says something completely different. A still water bowl that has been sitting on the floor for more than 8 hours is not solving your cat's hydration problem. It is silently creating a new one. And after more than a decade of feline nutrition research, this mechanism is one of the most consistently overlooked drivers of chronic kidney disease in domestic cats. Not because owners do not care, because almost no one in the mainstream pet world ever explained how a cat's thirst drive actually works at the neurological level. Here is what is actually happening inside your cat's body while that bowl sits there looking perfectly fine. Cats evolved in desert environments. Their wild ancestors obtained nearly 80% of their daily moisture from the prey they hunted and ate. Fresh, warm, moving, blood-rich tissue. Their bodies adapted to expect hydration to arrive that way. As a result, the part of the brain that triggers thirst in cats, the hypothalamic osmoreceptors, has an extraordinarily high activation threshold compared to dogs or humans. Translated into plain language, your cat does not feel thirsty until they are already mildly dehydrated. Their biology assumes the food will be wet. So they never develop the drive to seek out a bowl of standing water the way you might reach for a glass after exercise. A 2019 paper published in the Journal of Veterinary Internal Medicine by researchers at the University of California Davis School of Veterinary Medicine found that cats fed exclusively dry kibble consumed, on average 50% less water per day than their physiological need, 50%. And most of those cats were showing no visible signs of dehydration. They were not panting. They were not lethargic. They looked completely normal while their kidneys were quietly working under chronic stress. This is the invisible mechanism that almost nobody in the mainstream pet industry tells you about clearly, which is why chronic kidney disease is now the leading cause of death in domestic cats over the age of 10, according to data from the American Veterinary Medical Association. The kidneys are the first organ to absorb the damage from chronic low-grade dehydration. They concentrate urine to compensate. Over months and years, that concentration crystallizes into mineral deposits, thickens the tubular walls, and quietly reduces kidney function percentage by percentage. By the time a standard blood panel at your annual vet visit shows elevated creatinine or BUN levels, the kidney has already lost approximately 60 to 75% of its functional capacity. The damage is mostly done before the first symptom appears. Think of it this way. Chronic dehydration in a cat is like a drain that never fully closes. The water level in the system keeps dropping, slowly, steadily, invisibly. Your cat grooms normally, eats normally, plays normally, and underneath all of that normal behavior, a process that begins with something as simple as a still water bowl is shaving years off of their life, and this is just the first of 9 mistakes. Each one follows the same pattern. A well-meaning habit that looks like care from the outside, but that runs directly against the grain of how feline biology actually functions. A veterinary nutritionist named Dr. Lisa Pearson, whose work on feline hydration has been widely cited in clinical practice, has described this gap between owner perception and cat physiology as one of the most consequential disconnects in companion animal medicine. Owners assume a full bowl means a hydrated cat. The reality is that cats are behaviorally and neurologically disinclined to use that bowl the way we expect them to. The bowl being full proves nothing about how much the cat drank. It may only prove that the cat walked past it. So what actually works? Research on feline water intake behavior, including a controlled study from the University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine, found that cats consume up to 50% more water daily when offered a circulating water fountain compared to a static bowl. Moving water triggers a different sensory response in the cat's brain. It mimics a natural stream, which their instincts categorize as fresher and safer than standing water. The same instinct that makes a wild cat prefer a running creek over a stagnant puddle is still operating in your cat on your kitchen floor. The water fountain is not a luxury item, it is a biological correction. Combined with at least one wet food meal per day, which delivers water directly embedded in protein tissue, the way a cat's body expects it, you can shift a chronically underhydrated cat to a properly hydrated one within 2 weeks. The specific protocol that integrates these findings is called the triple intake system. One circulating water fountain placed away from the food bowl because cats instinctively avoid water near their kill site. One wet food meal per day, at minimum delivering approximately 60 to 80 milliliters of additional moisture, and a bowl change with fresh water every 24 hours maximum. Not every 3 days, not when it looks low, every single day. The bowl change matters because bacteria and biofilm accumulate in standing water bowls within hours, and cats have a highly sensitive olfactory system. They can detect microbial changes in water that are completely invisible to humans. When a cat sniffs the bowl and walks away, most owners interpret that as the cat being picky. What is actually happening is the cat's nose is doing exactly what it was designed to do, rejecting water that smells wrong. The water is not safe by their biological standards, even if it looks clean to you. Now here is the mistake that invalidates the entire triple intake system for more than half the owners who try it. They place the water fountain directly next to the food bowl because it seems logical. Food and water together, one area, easy to manage. But in feline predatory psychology, water near a food source registers as contaminated. In the wild, a carcass near a water source means that water is compromised by decomposition. Cats avoid it instinctively. The fountain needs to be in a different room, or at minimum across the room from the food station. That single placement detail is what separates a cat who uses the fountain every day from a cat who sniffs it once and ignores it permanently. Mistake number 1 is not just about water. It is about understanding that your cat's biology is not a simplified version of human biology. It is a completely different operating system with different thresholds, different instincts, and different vulnerabilities. And the mainstream pet industry, with its focus on food marketing and supplement sales, has done a genuinely poor job of communicating that. Not out of malice, but the result is millions of cats living in a state of chronic low-grade dehydration that their owners cannot see and would be devastated to know about. There is a cat named Apollo, a 7-year-old orange tabby whose owner, a teacher from Portland, Oregon, had been doing everything right by every standard measure. Premium dry food, annual vet visits, clean litter box, lots of play. Apollo was diagnosed with stage 2 chronic kidney disease at his annual checkup, and his owner was completely blindsided. The vet had not flagged water intake as a concern in any prior visit. Apollo had been drinking from a still bowl placed next to his food station his entire life. The diagnosis was not a failure of love. It was a failure of information reaching the person who needed it most. Apollo is now on a wet food-heavy diet with a circulating fountain placed in the hallway, 15 feet from his food bowl. His most recent kidney panel showed stable values for the first time in 2 years. His story is not unique. It is repeated in veterinary practices across the United States every single week. The mainstream pet industry bears real responsibility here. Dry kibble manufacturers have spent decades marketing their products as complete and balanced nutrition, a phrase with a specific regulatory meaning that says nothing about moisture delivery. A food can be nutritionally complete on paper and still be contributing to chronic dehydration by design. The convenience economy of dry food, cheap, shelf-stable, easy to pour, has quietly become one of the most significant contributors to renal disease in the domestic cat population, and the label will never tell you that. It is not required to. This is why understanding the biology behind each mistake matters more than any product recommendation. You cannot make a genuinely informed decision about your cat's care from a marketing label. You can make it from understanding the mechanisms. And that is exactly what each section of this video is built to give you. The next mistake on this list follows an almost identical pattern. Something that looks completely normal on the surface, something most veterinarians do not flag during annual checkups, that is silently activating a stress response in your cat's nervous system every single day. And unlike dehydration, this one has a behavioral consequence you are probably already seeing without realizing what is causing it. Mistake number 2 is one that almost every single cat owner in an apartment is making right now. And it is not about food, it is not about water, it is about light. Specifically, the artificial light cycle inside your home and what it is doing to a biological clock inside your cat that most owners do not even know exists You come home from work, turn on every light in the apartment, watch television until midnight, and then go to bed. Your cat is exposed to the exact same light pattern. And to you, that feels like nothing. To your cat's circadian system, it is like living in permanent jet lag. Every single day. Here is the mechanism that almost nobody in the mainstream pet world explains. Cats are crepuscular animals. Their biology is wired for peak activity at dawn and dusk, the low-light transitional hours of the day. Their eyes contain a disproportionately high concentration of rod photoreceptors, which are built for detecting motion in low-light conditions, and a structure behind the retina called the tapetum lucidum, which reflects available light back through the photoreceptors a second time. This is the engineering of an animal whose entire nervous system was calibrated for a world that cycles between bright and dark predictably. That light cycle is not just about vision. It is the primary input signal for the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the cluster of neurons in the hypothalamus that governs the circadian rhythm, the internal 24-hour biological clock that regulates sleep, hunger, hormone secretion, immune function, and cellular repair. Every one of those processes runs on the clock, and the clock runs on light. When you expose your cat to bright, artificial light until 11 or 12 at night, you are telling their suprachiasmatic nucleus that it is still the middle of the afternoon. Melatonin secretion, which should begin rising as darkness falls, and which signals the body to shift into recovery mode, is suppressed by artificial light in cats the same way it is in humans. A study published in the Journal of Biological Rhythms found that light exposure in the hours before natural sleep onset suppressed melatonin production in mammals by up to 90%. 90%. That is not a small perturbation. That is a near total disruption of the signal that initiates physiological recovery. Think of the circadian rhythm like a master conductor managing a 40-piece orchestra inside your cat's body. Every instrument, the immune system, the digestive system, the hormonal system, the nervous system, is supposed to play its part at the right moment in the right sequence. The conductor's baton is the light signal. When that signal is wrong, the orchestra does not stop. It keeps playing, but every section falls slightly out of sync. And the cumulative effect of playing out of sync night after night, week after week, is what researchers call circadian dysregulation. It does not look like a disease. It looks like a cat that is slightly off, a little more irritable than usual, sleeping at strange hours, less interested in play, eating inconsistently, grooming excessively or not enough. Symptoms that most owners attribute to personality or age, when the actual driver is a disrupted biological clock that is producing measurable hormonal and immune consequences. Dr. Cheisler at Harvard Medical School, whose team has published extensively on circadian biology across species, has noted that chronic circadian disruption is linked to suppressed natural killer cell activity, the frontline immune response against viral infection and abnormal cell growth. This has been documented in feline models as well. A cat whose circadian system is chronically dysregulated is a cat whose immune system is running below its functional capacity every single day. Not dramatically, not visibly, silently. And that gap, that small but constant immune deficit, is what makes chronic circadian dysregulation one of the most underappreciated contributors to long-term feline health decline. Here is where the mainstream conversation about this topic fails cat owners completely. When feline veterinarians or pet influencers discuss sleep and cats, the conversation almost always centers on how much cats sleep, typically 12 to 16 hours per day. That number gets presented as proof that cats are fine, that they rest plenty, that their sleep is not a concern. But the quantity of sleep and the quality of sleep governed by a healthy circadian rhythm are not the same thing at all. A cat can sleep 14 hours in a disrupted light environment and still not complete the deep restorative sleep phases. The non-rapid eye movement cycles where cellular repair, immune consolidation, and hormonal reset actually happen. The hours are there. The biology is not firing correctly, and no one is talking about that distinction. A domestic cat living in a Manhattan apartment with blackout curtains drawn all day and lights blazing until midnight is experiencing a light environment that has zero relationship to the light environment their biology was built for. This is not a minor inconvenience. Over months and years, the accumulated effect of circadian disruption touches every system in the body. The immune system runs below capacity. The digestive system fires at wrong intervals. contributing to inconsistent appetite and absorption issues. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, maintains a flatter, higher baseline than it should rather than cycling properly through its natural peak in the morning and trough at night. And elevated baseline cortisol in cats has been directly linked to chronic stress of low grade, a condition that veterinary behaviorists at the Ohio State University Indoor Cat Initiative have identified as one of the most widespread and least diagnosed conditions in domestic cats living in modern apartments. There is a cat named Miso, a 4-year-old tortoiseshell who lived in a Chicago studio apartment with her owner, a graphic designer who worked late and kept every light on until 1 in the morning. Miso had been increasingly aggressive, over-grooming her left flank to the point of creating a visible bald patch and refusing to eat at consistent times. 3 different vets had evaluated her for skin conditions, digestive issues, and behavioral problems. No one had asked about the light environment when her owner, following advice from a feline behaviorist, began implementing a gradual dimming protocol each evening starting at 8:30 and installed a blackout shade on the bedroom window. Miso's over-grooming stopped within 6 weeks. Her appetite regularized. The aggression dropped to near zero. The biology that had been working against her was simply given the cue it had been waiting for. The practical correction for this mistake is called the dim-down protocol, and it has 3 components. First, begin reducing ambient light in your home starting 2 hours before your cat's typical sleep period. Not your sleep period, theirs. For most domestic cats, sharing a home with a working owner, this means starting around 8 or 9 in the evening. Use dimmer switches, switch off overhead lights and use lamps, or simply leave 1 or 2 low wattage sources on instead of the full room lighting. Second, block external light sources in areas where your cat sleeps. Street lights, illuminated signs, and passing headlights are all capable of disrupting melatonin secretion, even through partially drawn curtains. A properly darkened sleeping area is not optional, it is the physiological requirement. Third, expose your cat to natural light during the day for at least 30 to 45 minutes. If they are indoor cats in an apartment, this means placing a perch near a south or east-facing window where sunlight enters during the morning hours. Natural light exposure in the morning anchors the circadian clock to the correct phase. It sets the starting point from which the rest of the daily hormonal and neurological cycle unfolds. The mistake that invalidates this entire protocol for the majority of owners who try it is attempting it inconsistently. The circadian system is a biological clock that calibrates over days and weeks, not hours. If you implement the dim-down protocol 4 nights and then spend the weekend with every light on until 2 in the morning, you have erased the calibration and started over. Consistency is not a preference here, it is the mechanism. The clock only resets when the signal is reliable. One disrupted night does not ruin everything, but a disrupted weekend every week means the clock never fully locks in, and your cat lives in a permanent state of partial circadian dysregulation without either of you knowing it. This mistake and the one before it share something important. They are both invisible. There is no behavior that clearly says my circadian rhythm is disrupted the way a limp says my leg hurts. The cat just seems slightly off in ways that are easy to rationalize. And that invisibility is exactly what makes these mistakes so consequential. The next mistake on this list is different. This one produces a behavior you have almost certainly seen and probably attributed to the completely wrong cause, which means you have been trying to fix a problem you never correctly identified. If you are finding this video useful, subscribe to the channel right now. Every subscription tells the algorithm that this kind of science-based owner-first content matters, and it is the only way to make sure these videos reach the people whose cats need them most. Mistake number 3 is the one that produces the behavior you have definitely seen and almost certainly misread. Your cat scratches the furniture, you correct them, they do it again, you get a scratching post, they ignore it completely and go back to the couch. You assume they are being stubborn, territorial, or just difficult. You are wrong, and the reason you cannot fix it is that you never understood what scratching actually is at the biological level. It is not destruction. It is not defiance. It is a compulsory neurological process that your cat's nervous system requires for stress regulation. And the way most owners respond to it makes the underlying stress significantly worse. Here is the real mechanism. Cats have scent glands embedded in the soft tissue between their digital pads, the paw pads on the underside of each foot. When a cat drags their claws down a surface, they are not just leaving a physical mark. They are depositing a specific chemical signature from those glands onto the substrate. That chemical signature is called an interdigital semiochemical, and its function in feline communication is to mark a location as known, safe, and claimed. It is your cat telling themselves in the most literal biological sense, "This space is mine and I have been here." The physical act of scratching also stretches the flexor muscles from the shoulder down through the paw, releases tension stored in the muscle fascia, and removes the dead outer sheaths from the claws that accumulate over time. These are not optional behaviors, they are physiological requirements. A cat that cannot scratch is a cat that cannot complete a necessary stress regulation cycle. The specific type of stress this addresses is what feline veterinary behaviorists at the International Society of Feline Medicine call territorial anxiety, the low-grade chronic activation of the autonomic nervous system that occurs when a cat feels their space is uncertain, uncontrolled, or insufficiently marked. This is one of the most common stress states in domestic cats living in apartments, where the environment is small, frequently entered by strangers, altered by rearranged furniture, and filled with unfamiliar scents from deliveries, guests, or other animals. A cat in this state scratches as a form of self-regulation. It is the feline equivalent of deep breathing, and when you punish them for it, you eliminate the regulatory behavior without addressing the underlying stress that is driving it. The stress does not go away. It accumulates. And within days, the cat returns to scratching, this time with slightly higher urgency, because the unregulated stress has compounded. A 2021 study published in Frontiers in Veterinary Science, led by a team at the University of Bristol, found that cats in environments with inadequate scratching opportunities showed significantly elevated urinary cortisol to creatinine ratios, a reliable biological marker of chronic stress, compared to cats with multiple appropriate scratching surfaces. The stressed cats were not scratching more, they were scratching in the wrong places because the right places were not available. The couch is not their first choice. It is their only choice when nothing else in the environment offers the right combination of height, texture, stability, and location. That last word matters enormously. Location. This is the single detail that explains why 90% of scratching posts fail. Most owners buy a scratching post, place it in the corner of a spare room or tucked behind a door, and then are genuinely confused when their cat ignores it and continues scratching the arm of the main sofa. But the sofa is not being scratched because of its material, it is being scratched because of where it is, right at the entrance to the main living area, in the highest traffic zone of the home, visible from multiple angles. Scratching in that location deposits scent markers precisely where a cat's territorial biology tells them the markers need to be. At the boundary between spaces, at the threshold where different zones of the home meet, in the places most frequently occupied by the humans whose presence the cat needs to integrate into their scent map. A scratching post in the spare room addresses none of that. The cat has no territorial reason to scratch there. Their biology does not care about the post, it cares about the location. The correction here is not to buy a different post, it is to place a post directly adjacent to the furniture currently being scratched, right next to it. Within 12 inches, the cat will transfer to it naturally over 7 to 10 days because the post now occupies the correct territorial position. After transfer is established, the post can be moved a few inches per day toward a more convenient location, but the transition must be gradual or the behavior reverts. The post itself needs to be tall enough for the cat to fully extend their spine vertically while scratching, which for most adult cats means a minimum of 32 inches. Most commercial posts sold in pet retail chains are 24 inches or shorter. That is why they fail even when placed correctly. A cat cannot complete the full flexor stretch that the nervous system requires from a post that is too short. The behavior goes unsatisfied and the cat moves back to a surface that allows full extension. There is a cat named Dahlia, a 3-year-old Siamese mix living in a Seattle apartment, whose owner had tried 4 different scratching posts, 2 different deterrent sprays, and double-sided tape along every couch edge. Nothing worked. A feline behaviorist assessed the apartment and found that all 4 posts were placed against walls in low-traffic areas, all were under 26 inches tall, And there was not a single scratching surface within the first 15 feet of the apartment's front door, which was the highest stress threshold in Dahlia's environment. 3 vertical posts, each 34 inches tall, were placed at the entry zone, beside the main couch and at the bedroom doorway. Within 2 weeks, Dahlia had not touched the furniture once. The owner had not changed the cat. The owner had finally provided what the cat's biology was asking for all along. This brings the total to 3 mistakes, each one rooted in the same core reality. Feline biology is specific. It has requirements that are not negotiable because they are not preferences. They are physiological necessities built over millions of years of evolution. Chronic dehydration, circadian dysregulation, and unsatisfied territorial stress regulation are not minor inconveniences in a cat's life. They are chronic stressors that compound over time, interact with each other, and produce the cluster of symptoms that most owners experience as their cat just getting older or just being difficult. That is not age. That is accumulated biological need going unmet. The remaining 6 mistakes in this video follow the same logic and cover feeding schedules, litter box placement, social interaction timing, predatory play deprivation, ambient sound environment, and the single most dangerous mistake of all, which most owners discover only when it is already too late to fully reverse the damage. Each one has a specific biological mechanism, a specific clinical consequence, and a specific correction. None of them require expensive products. All of them require understanding the actual science of how a cat's body and mind function, which is exactly what almost no one in the mainstream pet world has given you. Now, here is the thing about these 9 mistakes collectively. They do not operate in isolation, they stack. A cat experiencing chronic dehydration, circadian dysregulation, and unsatisfied scratching compulsion simultaneously is a cat whose cortisol baseline is elevated on 3 separate fronts at once. Cortisol suppresses immune function. It disrupts the gut microbiome. It accelerates cellular aging. The cumulative load of these 3 stressors together produces a biological environment that is measurably different from a cat experiencing none of them. And the difference does not show up on a standard annual wellness panel. It shows up in how the cat moves through the world, how available they are for connection, how resilient they are when illness or stress hits, how long they stay healthy and present in your life. The science of feline care has advanced significantly in the last 15 years. Researchers at Cornell, UC Davis, Ohio State, Bristol, and Edinburgh have produced a body of literature that gives cat owners an extraordinarily detailed picture of what cats actually need and why. That information exists. It is published. It is peer-reviewed. The problem is that it has not made its way into the mainstream conversation about cat ownership in any consistent or useful form. The gap between what feline science knows and what the average American cat owner knows is wide. This video exists to close a small part of that gap. If you watch this entire video, you already know more about feline biology than the majority of cat owners in this country, and that knowledge has real consequences for the animal living in your home right now. Drop the word biology in the comments if any of these 3 mechanisms change the way you are thinking about your cat's daily routine, and subscribe to this channel. Every subscriber makes it possible to keep translating feline science into something that every owner can actually use. The next video goes deeper into the feeding mistakes that shorten cat lives, including one specific habit that nearly 60% of American cat owners have, that veterinary cardiologists have directly linked to early onset heart disease. Do not miss it.